Hi, I'm Chris from develephant. I wanted to share a tool with you called Corona HTML5 Node Kit. And what this does is it allows you to build Corona HTML5 plugins with NodeJS, NPM packages, and modern JavaScript. Now this will probably only be of interest to people who develop JavaScript as kind of their main thing. Modern JavaScript, Node.js in particular. What this again does is allows you to use some of the common elements for Node.js, NPM, and modern JavaScript to build plugins for Corona. So this is more of an advanced topic. Again, if you don't have a background in modern JavaScript or Node.js, then this might not be of interest to you. But I've been using this to build some of my plugins, and it's been very helpful and gives you a lot of different options to work with. So the first thing is you need to have Node.js installed, which if you're working with any of these technologies, then you probably already do. It's just a simple installer that you download and run on your system, and creates the runtime for JavaScript. Once you have the node installed, Node.js, you can just go ahead and run this command here on the command line, and it will install the Corona HTML5 Node Kit, and that will create a command line tool called Corona Kit that will be available on your terminal. Now this is definitely a highly opinionated framework that I use. In the documentation here, there's a whole overview of the framework itself, the command line interface, structure, etc. This has been tailored to work with the engines that will output and run HTML5 projects for Corona. And behind the scenes, it's using Browserify and Babel. So anything that you can use with Browserify through NPM, you can use to create plugins for Corona on the HTML5 engine. So to get started with the kit, I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing you need to do is have a directory folder that you've created, a project folder. I have an empty folder here that I've created called fortune_project. And what we're going to do is just do a quick walkthrough of how we kind of use the tool to build out a plugin using these technologies. I'm not going to get deep into how to use JavaScript or Node.js or any of these things. This is just more to kind of walk through how the tool works. So we start with an empty project folder, and then we'll go ahead and jump into our editor. And I have that project folder open here now in Visual Code, and from the command line we want to get this project started. So we're going to do a Corona Kit init, and this is all in the documentation as well. First thing we want to provide is the demo application name. This is the application that is created for the HTML5 build that will allow us to test our plugin as we work on it. So I'm going to just call this Fortune Demo. We then want to provide the plugin name, and that is --plugin, and then we're just going to call this plugin Fortune. And then we need to provide our publisher ID, which is used for creating the file that's published to Corona for plugins. So it's usually a reverse domain. In my case, I'm just putting --ID and then com.develephant. So these are the three things that we need to provide to get this framework up and running. So we go ahead and hit return. It's going to go ahead and start to generate out the framework for us. It's going to install some dependencies for Node, and then at that point we're all set up and the directory structure is built. Now again, in the documentation there is a lot more detail about the directory structure and what these different folders do, but just briefly, the Corona project folder holds the demo project that we use to test the plugin. The JS plugin source is where all of our JavaScript source code will go for our plugin. The node modules you don't have to worry about. When we output the HTML5 project, that's going to end up in this folder, and then the output plugin folder will just hold our plugin for distribution after the fact. So those again are covered more in the documentation. What we just did is we just created this framework through the init command, and it's gone ahead and we'll go ahead and add in all the different things we need to get started building our project. In our Fortune Lua here, it's gone ahead and put in all the proper names, and here's our publisher ID, etc., and created all the proper starter files for our plugin. So now in our Fortune.js here, you can see this is using modern JavaScript. We're going to just create a class for our plugin, and then we export that class out into the window.fortune and _js in our case here, and then that's how the plugin will get built. So the first thing to just show some of the things that you can do here with this framework is over here in npm, the package manager for Node. I've just gone ahead and picked something simple for an example. This package is called Fortune Cookie, and all this does is return it's basically just a big list of fortunes. So we're going to go ahead and integrate that into our plugin, and so we're going to go ahead and npm install that, and that is Fortune Cookie. Let's see if I can get it spelled right here, and then we'll save that as a dependency. And so now we have the Fortune Cookie module installed, and using NodeJS stylings here, we can just go ahead and pull that in. So we'll just call it FC for short. I'm going to do a require, and we have Fortune Cookie here. And so we have this one method already here in our plugin class, and it's being called here. This is the result, and this result is being printed out, which will end up going into the debug console for the plugin when we run the demo project. I don't really need to look at this. Actually, before we go too much further, I should actually just run this real quick so you can get an idea of what it looks like here as far as the process. So I'm just commenting this out for a second here. So the first thing, if we just start from the default and you've just spun up the project, we can do a Corona Kit, and the first thing we want to do is compile our JavaScript. So we do a Corona Kit compile, and that will compile all the JavaScript for us. You can see now we have a new file up here in our for our JS plugin, and then it's also put it into the distribution folder here. And then the next thing we want to do is, if we want to test it, then of course we're going to need to run a browser session. So we'll do a watch, a Corona Kit watch, and then a -d for the debug flag. And what this will do is this will use browser sync. Oh, oops, gotta build it first. Hold on one second. Let's go back here again. And what we want to do is we need to actually build the project. So I've compiled the JavaScript, and now I need to build the HTML. So we do that with Corona Kit build, and this is going to send a build request to Corona native. And with that, I should note that Corona is not running. So if you are using Mac OS, this is not applicable to Windows, but on Mac OS, you need to go into your Corona application folder, and in the native folder, you need to run this setup Corona native app, which will create a quick symlink for you, and then you can use Corona native with the Node Kit. Again, that's only for Macintosh. Because HTML5 is a moving target, if you're downloading new dailies, then you will need to run that for any new daily that you download, but keep that up to date. Okay, so let's jump back over here again. So now we've gone ahead and we've done our HTML5 build, so you can see the output there. Now we can go ahead and watch this, and again I'm going to provide the -d for the debug flag, and this is going to start a browser sync session for us. We're not going to be using anything visual here for this example, but if we go down here to the bottom and look at the debug console here, it says Fortune is alive, and that correlates with our echo method here that's being pulled from our JavaScript plugin here. So basically we're just echoing this string back. So that's how we pull that quick test up. So most of the time it's going to be compile, build, and then once we build, because we're using browser sync, this will automatically refresh and update. So let's go back to where we were. We had brought in the fortune cookie module from npm, and we're going to go ahead and use that. So let's change a few things around here. We're going to go back to our main Lua. We don't really need this anymore, and we'll just rename this method getFortune. And then we'll go back into our JavaScript here. We'll change our method name here to getFortune, and we don't need any of this stuff. So now we'll reference our fortune cookie module that we just installed a second ago. And again, this is basically just one big array of fortunes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and we're going to just pull randomly. We'll pull some fortunes out. So I'm going to do floor math.random, and then we'll use the length of this array here. Okay, so now that we've gotten this all in place, when we call the getFortune method here from the plugin, then it'll print the result to the debug console. We've got that all set up, and again we've pulled in this fortune cookie module from npm. So browser sync uses up one of the terminal sessions, so we're going to open up another terminal session here, and we're going to go ahead and first we need to compile the JavaScript plugin. So we're going to do a Corona Kit compile, and then we need to do a Corona Kit build. And it'll send that off. Once that's done, we'll get a refresh here on our debug HTML5, and down here in our console now you can see it's pulling from the fortune cookie module that we integrated there from npm. So if you're familiar, which you probably are if you're watching this and have any interest, you can go ahead and use all the Node.js type stylings. So I'm going to go ahead and in my making sure I'm using my JS plugin source here, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of create a new file. We'll just call this greeting.js, and I'm just going to do a module.exports and put a function in here. We'll just use a name, and we'll use return hello, and then we'll add the name to that. So this is basically just a really quick and simple Node.js module. Go ahead and close that down. We'll require that into our main plugin JavaScript here. We'll call it greeting, and we can get to that there. And so now let's go ahead and grab greet for that. So we'll say greet equals greeting. I'll just pass a name, and then we'll go ahead and we'll just add that to here for no reason. So now we'll get this greeting. It's basically just an echoed back to us, and then we're just kind of concatenating it with the actual fortune itself. So we need to go ahead and run through our compile again, and then we need to run our build, and then this should update once our HTML is output. And then we can see down here we're getting our greeting back, hello Sally, and then we get another random fortune spit out for us. So we can change this to whatever we want. Danny again. What happens is the process becomes a compile and then a build, and then you can go ahead and see your plugin in action in your demo project here. And now we have Danny, and he's got his own fortune. So of course you could add elements to the visual aspect if you didn't want to use the debug console, but just for the example, that's what we're using there. So that quickly shows how you can build plugins using NodeJS, NPM, and modern JavaScript for your Corona HTML5 plugins. And if you hit the documentation, it's all explained throughout here, the workflow, all the commands and their arguments. And it's just an interesting way to build. It's more comfortable for myself personally because I use Node.js a lot, and I like to be able to have access to the different packages that are already available on NPM to kind of create deeper plugins. And this is a very simple plugin that I have chosen for NPM. For Chromium.js, which is another plugin written, I use a package called Quest, which is which allows you to make XHR kind of requests out, and is a much more complicated plugin. So that compiles up just fine. So again, anything that uses anything that's compatible with Browserify will work with your Corona 5 plugin compile. And so hopefully that's helpful to JavaScript developers who want to create some plugins for Corona HTML5. Thanks for watching.